Welcome back, everybody, to A Little Less Fear podcast. I'd like to introduce Shana Francesca. She's a speaker, writer, and entrepreneur. She helps people live more joyful and connected lives through the principles of life design. I love that, life design. Shana believes our present and future are transformed when we infuse our lives with intention. We design our lives and realize the power in accepting ourselves as the author of our story. Welcome to A Little Less Fear podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you so much. So, hey, Shana, tell us about your journey. What brought you to where you're at today?
Woo, okay, buckle up. So I grew up in evangelical Christianity in a cult. And I didn't actually recognize that it was a cult till like 3 years ago.
Oh,
I just thought I grew up in a really strict conservative way that I no longer believed in. But until I really started digging into what cults were, I was like, oh no, that was a cult.
wow. Yeah. Wow.
And my home life was abusive. My outside of house life was manipulative and full of propaganda and abusive. And so growing up, there was no one around me whose life I wanted, right? I didn't want my own life, and I didn't see anybody's life who I actually wanted. And there was just this voice inside of me that just kept pushing to fight to define my own life, in circumstances that were completely outside of my control. And I'm also neurodivergent. So as a neurodivergent person, it was really hard to not be overwhelmed sensorially all the time, right? By being overstimulated by abuse, by yelling, by screaming, all these things. And when you're dealing with sensory overwhelm all the time, it's really hard to find your own voice.
Yes.
Because your voice is just screaming inside, like, I just need to be heard. I need someone to care about who I am. And in all of that chaos, what I started to recognize is that I could try to carve out a space for myself. And that became my bedroom. That became my oasis, that place. And I wasn't allowed to have a lock on my door. That's how controlling my father was. But I could close that door or almost close it. And I could just put music on, and I could just try to blur the world out, and I could fill the walls with images of the life that I was hoping I could create for myself, and quotes from books that I was reading in an effort to find mentors or people or a voice, a teacher, someone to help me to view what was possible on the other side of my circumstances. I used to take those like J.C. Penney catalogs, those thick old J.C. Penney catalogs, and I would circle all the things in them that I wanted to be a part of the life that I could define for myself. And I would dog ear the pages and I would flip through. And I remember the one time, like, my dad took it from me. He was like, it's useless for you to be imagining any of this stuff. Like, why do you have it? Why do you keep it? And he took it from me and wouldn't let me have it. And it was like he knew the power of me imagining other circumstances, that it would foster my curiosity, and that I would know what was happening to me, what was being done to me was not right. Mm-hmm. And through all of it, the one thing I held on to was my curiosity. And I couldn't be curious out loud, but I could be curious inside myself, and I could seek out, fulfillment of that curiosity through books. And eventually what I came to recognize is that my physical surroundings, especially my bedroom, whenever really difficult things would happen, I would like reorganize something, or I would like clean out my closet, or I would reorganize my bedroom furniture. And it was like I was breaking my association with what was in an effort to reset the stage, right? Mm-hmm. And I use this language all the time with my clients, is that, first of all, of the three things that are most important to our happiness, number one is our mental health, number two is our home.
Yeah.
And I argue that those two things are actually so connected.
Absolutely.
And we are not necessarily consciously aware of that we need to be authentically reflected in our home. But I somehow intuitively recognized that, and so found the ways that I could reflect myself in my own bedroom. And now how I explain it to people is like, your home, first we have to get clear on the story we want our life to tell, right? Not
Right.
in a way that we're writing a script and it needs to be followed and we want specific outcomes, because we have no control over the specific outcomes. But what we do have control over is setting that north. What is it that we want to feel in our life? Who is it that we want to be in our life? How do we want to show up? And then we can recognize that we spend 2/3 of our life in our home, and a huge percentage of the decisions we make every day are made inside of our home. So
That's
we
so
need
true.
to be authentically reflected in our home. We need to feel seen and heard and understood by what surrounds us. And we can recognize that our home becomes the stage from which we tell the story of our life,
Wow.
right? And not in a performative way, but in a way that it becomes the place from which we act out all the
Yes.
things, right? The connections with our family, the connections with our friends, the people, all these beautiful things, connection with ourselves, right? And we need to feel safe and heard and understood within those walls.
Wow, that's powerful. I've never heard it said that way, Shana. Wow.
Yay.
You're saying that there's three important things to be authentically reflected. One was mental health. Two was your home. What is the third thing?
Physical health. So
Oh,
a study
okay.
came out in 2019 in Europe. And it's interesting because it came out right as the pandemic shutdown was going to happen shortly after. And I think at that point, people became acutely aware when we were locked into our homes that things weren't necessarily right, but
Yeah,
we
that's
didn't
actually
know
when
why.
divorce rates went up.
Yeah, we didn't know why, right? Because we lost all distractions
Yeah.
from what's actually supporting us rather than us supporting it. Our home is meant to support us. But I think so much of what we don't recognize is that we set it up in an effort to support other people, right? For other people's opinions, other people's thoughts. What might this person think, right? That's why we like feverishly clean our house when
Yeah.
someone is coming over, right?
Yeah, you do the most cleaning when someone's gonna come over, right?
Right. But if we instead, and I'm not proposing this kind of strict, like the house has to always be perfect. None of that.
Mm.
None of that. I don't buy into any of that. But what I do buy into is setting up our home to recognize it needs to be supporting us, right? And because it's critical to our happiness.
How did you figure this out? I mean, I've interviewed so many people, and I hear, with finding your authentic self, but everything's starting with your home. That's so incredible, and it's so important. You're right
Yeah,
on point with that.
I started out my career as an interior designer. So I have a
Oh,
BS in interior design. Mm-hmm.
you merged it all together. You made it
I merged it all
spiritual.
together. Yes, exactly. And if I hadn't grown up the way that I did, I think the most sinister part, right? And I think Dr. Martin Luther King, it was either him or Malcolm X, who said the most sinister part, the most sinister people, or the most harmful people in the world are not the ones who are at either extreme, but people in the middle who don't recognize that those extremes are actually both affecting their lives, right? Like, I'm
Right.
obviously hardcore paraphrasing. My thing is, because I grew up in extreme evangelical Christianity and in an abusive home and a place that did not allow me to truly be myself, it has allowed me to see how those principles have formed and shaped every aspect of our society in America.
Yeah.
And that they're more sinister than we consciously recognize them to be on a regular basis, and they're more infiltrated into our everyday lives than we think they are.
Shana, how did you begin to see how did you actually get out of this cult-like life that you were
Mm,
brought it up
yeah,
into? How did you actually say, you know what,
yeah,
this doesn't serve me, this isn't me, this isn't gonna
yeah,
help me, I'm not gonna launch my
yeah,
life this way? How did that
yeah.
happen?
Well, so it started with when I was 24, my dad left. What I didn't mention is that, okay, it's gonna get trigger warning, trigger warning.
I'm sorry, are
So,
you
so
okay? We don't do you
no,
want
I'm
to?
fine.
Oh,
No,
okay.
I'm fine. I'm saying like trigger warning for anyone listening. So, my very first memory is of sexual assault. It was a babysitter's son. When I was 12, my father forced me to take a chastity pledge in front of my 2,500 person church. At 15, he sexually assaulted me, right? All of this while there's all kinds of other abuse going on. He finally left when I was 24. Thank thank the universe. I don't believe in God anymore, but thank the universe.
Meaning he
So,
left the family?
yeah, he left.
Okay.
Yeah, he got a girlfriend in Canada and he left, thankfully. And so when that happened, our brains start, many people's brains kind of fully form or finish forming around 25, 26, some as late as 30, but usually that's about the age 25, 26. So he left. And then I was able to kind of like finally breathe a sigh of relief and kind of start to grow, like heal and grow and learn and like be all the things, right? And so he left, my brain finished forming. I started salsa dancing.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I was a semi-professional salsa dancer for 4 years. I still dance, I just don't perform or compete anymore. But when I started going out dancing, the people at the church were like, well, how can you wear so little clothing? And that's devilry and whatever, all this like shenanigans. And I was just like, you know what? I've never felt more embodied in my life. I've never felt so connected to myself. And there's so much, and I didn't know this at the time, but there's so much research around the way like that trauma is stored in our bodies and that we need to move it out of our bodies. And a huge part of that is dance, right? And there's a beauty between connecting to the music and connecting to our bodies and being able to feel through emotions, right? And so it was a huge part of my healing. So when people started getting really nasty about it and they were being weird about my parents' divorce and everything, I just was like, I'm out, I'm leaving. So I left that church and I went to another church.
The same type of church?
Well, similar, yeah. It claimed to be non-denominational, but it was just a wolf in sheep's clothing. And so I was there for 4 years and I started seeing the same patterns of people protecting leadership. You're not allowed to question their decisions. You're not allowed to ask where the money's going, so on and so forth. And so I left that church and went to another church and then was there for about 4 years. And then I started seeing the same pattern happening again. And I was at that point, I was like, I'm neurodivergent, so pattern recognition is my thing, right? I'm very analytical. So I was like, oh, it's not, the problem isn't that particular church, it's evangelical Christianity, all of it. And I didn't expect to become an atheist, but I am now. I really just 3 years ago, I left the church and I explained to the pastor that of the church I was going to at the time, I told him exactly why. I was like, because as far as I'm concerned, the church as a whole in the United States is in the story of the Good Samaritan, the first two people. You are stepping over the bodies in the streets. As a matter of fact, you're the ones putting the bodies in the streets. The evangelical Christian church is in many ways, to me, the PR and marketing firm for capitalism, for white supremacy, for all of the bad things.
Yeah, it's all interwoven.
It's all interwoven. It's all once you see it, you can't unsee it. So
you sure can't. You see it
can't.
Everywhere after that.
You can't. It's everywhere, exactly. And so that binary thinking, once I started attacking that binary thinking that had been forced onto me, once I started unraveling that, you start pulling on that thread and it never ends, right? And so 3 years ago when I left the church, I just thought, oh, I still believe in God. It's just the church I don't believe in. And then now 3 years later, I'm like, oh, no, the God of the Bible is a homicidal maniac. I would never, ever, ever worship that God anymore.
Because the for real deal God is not going to judge. It's not binary thinking.
Correct.
There's no pain. There's no struggle.
Correct.
The for real deal
Correct.
God is all love, acceptance, and peace.
Yeah. And to me, the way that I look at it now is I don't believe in a puppet master in the sky, or at least the one described in the Bible in any way, shape, or form. But I do believe that we are all powerfully connected and that there is deep and meaningful beauty in that, and that we absolutely sense and know and need one another. So, I don't know what to call that, but that's what I believe in. I just don't call it God because when you say
of
God,
your experience, it's like
well, because too many people, correct, people automatically assume the God of the Bible, right?
Exactly.
So I'm like, I don't know what to call it, but I'm not that. I don't worship that. That thing is a no for me.
Yeah. Something that I read in your biography here that you're talking about the principles of life design.
Yeah.
What is life design to you? Is that part of the whole universal forces that we're talking about? That's aside from like this human type God that's in these cult-like religions, or
No, for me,
what is life design for you?
so for me, life design is understanding and getting clear on the story that you want your life to tell. And then
Okay.
choosing to be really intentional about. So for me, the difference between how I think, what I've working with my clients, the thing that we get to is, it's not about doing more in our lives, because that's what we're constantly hearing. You need to do more, hustle culture, blah blah. All that
Yeah.
is consumerist capitalist bullshit.
Yeah.
It's not about doing more. It's actually about being more intentional with what we're already doing. And when
I
we
like
get
that.
more intentional, we start to actually eliminate a lot of things from our life. Our life gets simpler, right?
Yes.
Much simpler, because we start to see what doesn't fit our intention, and we're
Right.
able to much easier just let it go. We become less attached and more connected, right? Because
Yeah.
capitalism tells us to hoard, to hold on to grip onto with our, no, that's attachment. What we need to look for is connection to ourselves, to one another, where it's like holding hands, right? Rather
Yeah.
than gripping onto each other, like grab, you're choosing both to hold hands, you're choosing to hold on to one another, you're choosing, two things are choosing each other energetically. Like our purpose aligns, who we are aligns, what all the things, right? The clothes, that, because everything is made of energy. So we
Yes.
need to be asking ourselves, does this align with my intention, with how I want to feel inside my own body, inside my own life, inside my own story?
Wow. So intention is connection.
Yes. Yeah, essentially.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. And that's so true.
Yeah.
And I mean, you're right on, because if you don't have an intention, then you're going to be on autopilot. And there's
Right.
really, I mean, and if you go on autopilot, you're going to just keep going and going and going. And the
Yeah.
next thing you
Well,
know,
that's
you're,
what our society wants, is autopilot. It
yeah,
doesn't want you to question. It doesn't want you to get curious. It doesn't, because when you're on autopilot, you are then more susceptible to marketing, to all these things that are telling us you need more, you need to consume more. I mean, just think about this, the saying from when I was a kid is like, keeping up with the Joneses, right? Well, that statement inherently applies that we have to consume more to prove our status, right?
yeah.
The way to prove your status and your worth and your value in our society is through consumption. But that's bullshit.
I know it totally is.
It's complete and total bullshit. And so, us taking a step back and saying, you know what? It's not that. It's
Right.
not minimalism. It's not maximalism. It's the middle road. It's the middle path. It's choosing, things so intentionally that we're conscious of what we're doing and the ramifications of everything we do. We're choosing the thing, and we're choosing the consequences of the thing,
That's so
whatever they
good.
may be.
You know what else I'm feeling when you're saying this? That when you're choosing things to be intentional, I'm also feeling that if you're more intentional with everything that you do, whether how you're going to communicate, whether what you're going to do that day, whether it's what you're going to eat, whether it's what you're
Yeah.
going to wear, if you're
Yes.
doing all this, it actually starts to bring of like a more peace within yourself.
Yes, exactly. It brings peace and it brings joy. Like, that's the thing. I think we've all forgotten that, like, hello, this is the only life we're sure we have. And
Yeah.
if we're not living it joyfully and connected to each other and to ourselves, what the hell are we doing?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And as you're saying this, I'm thinking it also brings you to the present moment. It keeps you
Yes.
present. What you said right
Yes.
now, as far as this is the only life that as we know it. And if
Correct.
you're intentional, then you're intentionally staying in the
Presence.
moment. Yeah.
Correct.
Wow.
You're not
That's
thinking about what
awesome.
you're going to get next. You're not thinking about all those things, because you need to be present in this moment, understanding who you're being, how you're showing up for yourselves and others, and the consequences of all those things, good or bad. Consequences don't have to be bad. And it's, most things are a sliding scale between good and bad. I don't believe in false dichotomies, because dichotomies almost never exist in
Yeah.
real life,
Right.
right? Like the reality of, like, no, there's only this or that. No, there's, everything's a sliding scale,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Everything's a
Yeah.
sliding
Yeah.
scale.
Because anything is possible.
Correct. Correct.
So
Yeah.
Sheena, after you finally like started dancing and you left the Colts,
Yeah.
and what happened after that? When did you actually get into where you're at now? Because you feel pretty solid to me.
It's taken a really long time. I'm 38. So my dad left 14 years ago, and it's been an intense 14 years of really soulful searching, like how it's like I had to start all over again, right? Because everything I was taught was a lie. But that's true for most of us,
Wow.
right? Most of us,
Yeah, that's true.
we're raised in propaganda, this binary propaganda. So but I just saw it so acutely because my experience was so extreme, right? So I had to really start reading, learning. I started a personal development book club so that I could gain some community around myself and support and gain some support in my learning and in my understanding of the world around me. I started doing a lot of different networking and 5, 6 years ago now, I started my own business and trying to carve out my own space in the world and create something I was genuinely enthusiastic about and something that made me want to get up every day. And ultimately, working with my clients at some point, because when I started my business, it was purely focused on interior design, like 3 years ago. And my clients are like incredible human beings. They're like judges and lawyers and like heads of departments at massive medical institutions. Like they're incredible people, right? But one of them was like, he was like, I tell everyone you're my interior designer and my life coach. And I was like, really? That's incredible.
That is incredible.
And I'm like, huh. I mean, because I always knew the power of, I always was the wise person in people's life. I was always the person people would come to when shit falls apart, when they need to hear the thing they don't want to hear. They always know. Ask Shana, because she's going to tell you what she wants to say, what you need to hear, not what you want to hear.
Yeah, you're not going to sugarcoat it.
No, I'm not. I mean, I'm not going to. I'm also not going to be mean about it. I'm going to be empathetic and I'm going to be kind about it. But I am going to tell you how I see the truth for you, right? And I recognize that it's how I see the truth and not necessarily the truth, right? Because
how you see the truth for them, like intuitively, right, type thing.
Right, exactly. Yeah, but when he said that to me, it really switched something. I was like, I think, and his partner Rob was saying to me, like, hey, Shana, what you're talking about, the conversations that we have, they're so powerful. You really should do more with that. And I was like, you are right. and so I just started exploring what was possible as far as that's concerned. And now I do a lot of public speaking and writing and not just that, but exploring other aspects of what's possible in my own life. As I encourage my clients to do it, I start to explore my own creativity and all of the things that are possible in my own life. So I just actually wrote my first romance novel. I'm in the process of editing it. I'll be publishing it within a week or so. So like there's all these beautiful things and
are starting to spring up because you're living your true self.
Exactly. And watching that happen in my client's life is what inspired me to recognize there was more that I wanted to do too. And that's the beauty about community, right? When we form community, we start seeing the ways each other are exploring your lives. It's like, oh, I want to do whatever. I always tell people jealousy isn't a bad thing unless you let it be. To me, when I feel the pangs of jealousy, I'm like, wait, that's an unfulfilled desire. Ooh, let's look at that. Right? Like
it's an opportunity.
It's an opportunity. It's not a bad thing.
Jealousy is an opportunity.
It's an opportunity. Do the thing.
Yeah.
Right? Do the thing.
Right. I love that. I had to write this down. So Shana, so what does your business entail? How do you help people? What are you doing?
Yeah, so what we focus on, so Concinnate is a life design company. That's the name of my company. Concinnate is a life design company. And we focus on doing workshops. I have group coaching launching January 30th. It'll be Mondays and Wednesdays. There'll be 2 separate sessions. People can choose from either Mondays or Wednesdays. And it'll be done virtually starting in January. I did 2.5 years worth of group coaching around these exact concepts around life design. And then I took the last year off because I was rebranding and building up my business, and I kind of needed to focus on that. But I miss it. I miss the way we learn together. Those conversations are just so powerful. So I'm relaunching those in January. And then also part of what we do is still interior design, because part of designing your life is recognizing the power of your home and its voice in your life. So we still do that as well. but now I mostly focus on public speaking and workshops and group coaching. So yeah, we do a lot of things.
That's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's so amazing. I just absolutely love how you brought your interior design experience and now bringing it to people's lives design.
Yeah.
And connecting people that way. That's really incredible, Shana.
I realized I could help a whole lot more people by talking about these concepts and people being able to do it for themselves, right? You don't necessarily need to hire some expensive interior designer. Yeah, maybe you need some help and some guidance in a few things, but maybe there's some questions that you need to dive in for yourself first, right? And really get clear on why you want to renovate your home or why you want to do these things. What ideas have led you to this place, and then let's be intentional about how you're doing it moving forward.
What kind of answers do you usually get to that?
A variety. Most of the time people haven't been asked those questions, especially men. Men are never asked in society.
I know.
How do you want to feel about your life?
No, they're not asked.
They're never, because they're not allowed. They're not allowed to be thinking, feeling whole human beings. Which is because we steal men's humanity, which is why it's so easy for men to objectify women, right? Because they've been objectified, right?
Yeah, that's the whole binary stuff, binary thinking.
Yeah, they've been dehumanized, so how are they supposed to hold on to their humanity and do anything other than objectify women?
Yeah, right. Oh, man.
The patriarchy. So
totally.
So, for me, I'm always and it's so interesting to me because throughout my group coaching for the 2.5 years, and I hope this maintains, right? Half of the people were men or people who identified as male. And the other half are people who identified as female. And having that balance of life experience became this beautiful conversation where each person is getting to hear, like you have people raised as male in the room being able to then understand what it is to be raised as female in this world, right? And then to understand that those aren't the only two options, and hold the scale between those two things. And most people actually probably exist more on that scale than they think they do. But those beautiful conversations. So I'm kind of really hoping that is maintained when coaching, in the people who sign up for group coaching in January, because it was such an incredible and racially diverse, all of it. So like, this was just such beautiful, rich conversation from a whole plethora of backgrounds. And it was just like, because men really need to be heard. They need to feel heard and understood, and to have men and women in the same room who are not together, right?
Yeah.
They're not romantically involved. There was no couples in the room. I actually would encourage that couples join separate sessions because I think there's too much tension that can occur when your partner's in the room, and too much expectation around how you're going to perform, right? So to keep them separate, but to have those conversations absent of expectation or result, just to be able to talk about life experience. It's such an incredibly beautiful thing. And many of the relationships created in those conversations still are maintained to this day.
And you do this through Zoom, or do you meet up in person, or a little bit of both?
Yeah, I used to do it solely in real life, but then through the pandemic, once the pandemic shutdown happened, we took it to Zoom. My goal is that we kind of be able to do it hybrid, but I work with people all around I want not just people on the East. Yeah, I want people all around the world to be able to be part of it. So my goal is to eventually be able to kind of do it through Zoom, and then create, depending on where clusters of people are from, to be able to have like in-person situations where we can get together maybe for a weekend or something like that, where we have a weekend workshop or something, a couple different places throughout the world, so that we can be in real life together.
What's one of the biggest challenges that you face in this current career that you're in right now?
Honestly, I think it's the people absolutely understand everything I'm saying, and they can feel it. They can feel everything I'm saying to be true, but there's still this feeling of needing to hold back a little bit, or needing to continue to conform to societal expectations. And because it's what they know, right? It's what we all know
That is
until we
very
know
challenging.
better, right? And so
Yeah.
bumping up against societal expectations is what I constantly am doing, you know, especially with people who are older, right? People who are millennials and Gen Z, they understand what I'm saying and are like, sign me up, right? But
Yeah.
like people who are boomers,
Oh,
that's where
wow.
the really difficult conversations are happening, right? Where it's like, but hold on. Like the other
Yeah.
day, I had to have a difficult conversation with someone around Christopher Columbus because they were defending the celebration of Columbus Day. And I was like, oh,
Do you know what happened?
I'm like, do you know, based on Christopher Columbus's own words, he's a rapist and a murderer? And I was like, so how many statues do you know erected to rapists? Did you want to go ahead and now start erecting more statues to rapists? And she was like, well, I never thought about it like that.
Yeah, because they only think about the hymns and the songs in elementary school that he sailed the ocean blue, you know, and
Right.
it's like, hang on a minute, he also brought all these STDs and a lot of people died.
Killed
And
people and
yeah,
specifically exploited them because they were nice. And
yeah,
he said that in his own writing, right? In his own writing. So learning how to challenge people to think differently is my favorite part of who I am and what I do. But it is really challenging because people intrinsically push back because they're like, they think I'm judging them. And I'm like, I'm not judging you. Number one, I'm passionate about this conversation. Number two, I wouldn't spend my time talking to you if I didn't care. If I didn't care, I would just keep walking.
so
I would just write you off and keep walking, but I actually care. So I'm taking my time, my most valuable resource to have this conversation with you. So getting people to recognize that me engaging in that conversation with them is not judgment, and it's not me trying to push myself on them, but getting them to question their assumptions. That's a difficult thing, but also my favorite thing, because once I start seeing the wheels turning in their head, I'm like, ooh, I've got you now.
how do
I've
you
got
see,
you
how do
now.
you notice that? How do you know that you're making their wheels turn?
Because you can see it in people's eyes, right? You can see it in the way they
There's a
pause.
different type they light up, huh? It's kind of like, oh,
No, they don't. It's almost like you can just see that they kind of like look off to the side and they're just like, huh. You can see that
lost in deep thought.
yeah, but it's also like that their posture relaxes because when people are being
Oh,
defensive,
wow.
they
Right.
straighten up, right? Their body
Right.
language gets
Yeah.
tight and taut and they
Yeah.
move back and they move
Right.
back away from you,
Oh, wow.
right? And when you pay attention, then all of a sudden you can see them kind of take a half step forward and their body relaxes and you can see them kind of look off like they're thinking and you're like, okay, now we have a place where we can start to actually
You
have
see that window of opportunity.
yeah, 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 yeah. That's my favorite part, when people reconnect to curiosity.
What about these going back to the baby boomers? What about the super stubborn baby boomers? How do you get across to them? I know a lot of those, by the way.
So do I. There's no way to convince someone of anything, right? The only
Sure.
time we can actually ignite change is if someone's open to that change. So I'm not interested in convincing anyone. What I am interested in doing is helping them to question their own presumptions. And if you choose to engage with me beyond that and involve yourself in group coaching, great. If you don't, and all it does is spark curiosity on your end, and at some point in time you begin to question your assumptions, great. If even in that moment, if the only thing it does is help you to actually hear what I have to say and alter your perception of even that moment, great, then I've accomplished something. I don't go into any conversation with anyone with a specific outcome in mind because
you already have that intention too.
Yeah, and also because every conversation that I had growing up in evangelical Christianity, the whole purpose was to convince someone of something, to use fear and manipulation and all of these things to convince someone of something, that they were going to go to hell if they didn't conform to, so on and so forth.
Yeah, you've already felt that horrible guilt, and it's not.
I don't want
anybody else.
I don't want that kind of shame put on you. I don't want people to shame, because shame doesn't teach us anything. What does is us to recognize, like to spark that curiosity in someone and then let them know that they're safe to come back and ask me more questions. right? Because
Yes.
if I'm proselytizing, if I'm forcing my opinions on someone, that doesn't spark curiosity. That doesn't make them feel that they and know that they can trust me. They don't feel emotionally safe with me.
Right.
My job isn't done very well if people don't feel emotionally safe with me. So for me, the key is that people know that they can come to me and they can have those difficult conversations. They can say those things and ask those questions in ways that are like not okay because they don't have any better language yet, right? But then I can say, hey, that language, not okay. Let's change that language, right? Let's be more observant. Let's do better, because I'm doing the same thing. I'm having to constantly question my own language, constantly needing to dive into that. And I think it's because of my willingness and my openness to say, I didn't get that right. Actually, I think I fucked that up. And I'm going to come back to you and I'm going to clean it up. And I'm going to say, my impact was different than my intention, and I'm gonna do better, and this is how I'm gonna do better. Like, clean it up, like take accountability in my relationships to that level, right? And I've done that many times in my life where I'm like, whoop, I know that you told me that thing before and that thing was important to you, and I did not hold myself accountable for remembering that thing. And because I love you, I should have remembered that thing. And I'm sorry that I didn't remember that thing or do that thing or say that thing. You know, you know what I mean? Like, just clean it
Totally.
up.
Yeah, clean it up.
Just clean it up, right? Like, and don't make it about me. I usually say it privately, right? I don't do it in the moment. I'm not making it all about me. I'm not making this whole grand gesture thing, so on and so forth. I'm just quietly, they're getting a text message or an email or a voice note that's like, hey, by the way, I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
You know, and then you move forward.
absolutely. Shana, this has been incredible. My goodness, I've learned so much from you already. I mean, these incredible quotes that you said: jealousy is an opportunity, intention is connection. Your
Yeah.
impact was different than my intention. Like, wow,
Yeah.
wow, wow. Thanks so much for sharing your incredible wisdom,
Yeah.
your energy, your spirituality, your story. How can our viewers or watchers and our listeners find you?
Yeah, the easiest way is to go to my website. Social media is all connected there. My website is www.concinnate.world. I'm sure it'll be tagged in the show notes.
Yes.
You can find my email there, my telephone number. That's my real telephone number, so you can call it. Don't stalk me, I'll block you. Information about group coaching and workshops is there. All of it's there. That's the easiest way to get a hold of me. So definitely check it out. Oh, your
Awesome,
cat.
Shana. Oh, yeah, that's Felix the cat.
Hi, Felix the cat.
Say hi, Felix. Come here. Oh, snap. Sorry. Here we go.
It's okay.
There we go.
Hi, cute kitty. Yeah, so that's the easiest way to find me is to head to my website.
Thank you, Shana, so much for spreading your love, your joy, your incredible story. And we're definitely going to keep in touch. I wish you an
Absolutely.
incredible weekend, and you take
Yeah,
care now.
thanks. You too.
Thank you so much.